بسم الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المنتجبين. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة ويا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وقال ربكم ادعوني أستجب لكم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. A second for the love of Imams al-Hassan wal-Hussein. A third for the love of Fatima al-Zahra with your loudest voices. One of the very vague and ambiguous concepts in Islam that most people have misunderstood and are confused about is the concept of Istikhara. This concept that some have taken very seriously in their lives and depend very much on it on a daily basis. There are some that don't perform any sort of act, that don't leave the house, that don't go to work, don't eat, don't travel, unless they perform istikhara. They think that it's an obligation for them before starting any project or leaving the house to perform an istikhara. And there are others on the far extreme that have no belief whatsoever in istikhara and believe that this is a myth, this is only for the ignorant, for the uneducated. As for the educated, they should never think of performing an istikhara. There are others who believe that performing an istikhara is fortune telling, that istikhara tells them about the future. For example, they perform an istikhara whether to see this year will they get married or not. If it comes out good, that means they will get married. If it comes out bad, that means they'll have to wait for another year or 2 years. They think it's fortune telling. Thus, there's a lot of vagueness and ambiguity revolving around the concept of istikhara. There are various extremes. A lot of people have misunderstood this concept. Because of its importance, tonight we shall touch upon this subject, the meaning of istikhara, how to perform istikhara, the results. What are the results of the istikhara? What do they mean? What does istikhara entail on our lives? And the violation of an istikhara. Is this permissible or not? We'll touch upon some of these points in the next couple of minutes, inshaAllah. Wa sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Most people don't know that there are two meanings to istikhara. The popular meaning and the less popular meaning. While the less popular meaning is the most correct meaning to the word istikhara. It is the concept, it is the meaning that is accepted amongst scholars and conforms to the ahadith that have been stated regarding istikhara by the Ahlul Bayt. The first meaning to istikhara, the less popular meaning, the meaning that most people, common people, do not know about. Istikhara means to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the best outcomes. To ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the best outcomes. When you're about to perform an act, when you're about to leave the house for work, when you're about to make a decision at your business, at school, when you and your wife are about to make a decision involving your son or daughter's future in school, for example, and so on and so forth. Asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the best results, for the best outcomes. This is the literal linguistic meaning of the word istikhara, to ask Allah for the good, for good results. And in reality, this is a form of dua. This is a dua. For those who object to performing istikhara, those who object to this concept, we tell them that the literal meaning of istikhara is a dua, asking Allah for the best outcomes. You're about to propose to someone for marriage. You're about to knock on someone's door with your parents for marriage. You ask Allah for the best outcomes so that this marriage becomes a blessed marriage. And that you and this person get along, that are compatible, and this marriage succeeds. This is a dua. And it is included in every verse that speaks of dua, and that dua is recommended, and that dua is one of the best forms of worship. This also includes this istikhara. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Quran, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ, Allah and your Lord said, call on me, I shall answer you. Istikhara is included. Or وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي. Allah tells the Prophet, that if my servants ask you, where am I? Tell them I am close. I answer the call of one who calls on me. Istikhara is a form of dua. You're calling on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're asking Allah for the best results, for the best outcomes. And a hadith by Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, ignorant is the one that starts a project or goes on a journey or starts any sort of action without asking Allah for the best outcomes. That means he's depending on himself. He doesn't want Allah to be involved. This is ignorance. Thus, when we look at the lives of the Ahlul Bayt, we see that the Imams, whenever they wanted to start a project, go on a travel, go on a journey, anything that they performed, they would always ask Allah for the best outcomes. They would say, Astaghfirullah Rabbi min rahmatih. I ask Allah for the best outcomes from His mercy. And one hadith, that if you're about to start something big, something important, say it 100 times. Say Astaghfirullah 100 times. And Allah will grant you the best outcomes. If you're about to start a business deal, say this. Say Astaghfirullah. The Imam says, if it's a big deal, if it's something important, say it 100 times. For example, you're about to go and propose for marriage. If it's something not so important, say it 7 times. Or in another hadith, say it 10 times. Say Astaghfirullah. I ask Allah for the best outcomes. And another hadith, when you ask Allah for the best outcomes, ask Allah for the best outcome with health. Because sometimes Allah will give you a good outcome, but without health, you might lose your health. The hadith says, if you ask Allah for the best outcomes in anything that you do at school, at work, in marriage, with your children, ask with health as well, to give you health. في عافية. أستغفر الله في عافية. Because sometimes Allah will choose something good for you, but without health. You might lose your health. You might lose a hand. You might lose an eye. If it's good for you. Not materialistically, but spiritually. And we'll talk more about that inshallah. So it is best to ask Allah for the best outcomes with health. And other ahadith, that if you want to make a decision and you are indecisive, you are not sure which decision to make. There's a business trip, you need to go to another state, for example, you need to travel to California for a business deal, you're not sure whether to go, whether not to go. Say Astaghfirullah 10 times. 10 times. Say, I ask Allah for the best outcomes. Allah will put the right decision in your heart. Intuition. Allah will tell you what to do, He'll put it in your heart. Or ask someone for advice, Allah will put the right answer in that person's advice. But don't go around asking a normal person on the street. Ask someone who is wise. Ask someone who you can trust. Allah will give you the right answer, the right decision. This is the first meaning of Istikhara, to ask Allah for the best outcomes. And as we saw, it's a form of dua. Those who say, what narrations do we have on Istikhara? Where do you get this from? Isn't Istikhara nonsense? Is it not a myth? Is it not putting our mind, our brains on hold, putting it on the shelf? No. This first meaning of Istikhara, it's a form of dua. Whenever we have a verse or hadith that says dua is recommended, it also includes Istikhara, because this is a form of dua. As for the second meaning of Istikhara, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The second meaning of Istikhara is the popular meaning. Is that when you are indecisive, you don't know what to do, whether I should marry this person or not, whether I should buy this house or not, whether I should go to, for example, Pakistan this year or not, whether I should buy this car or buy that car. You're indecisive. You ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for advice by either the Quran or the tasbih or the salat that al-ruqa'. This is the popular meaning of Istikhara. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, before performing an Istikhara, most people don't know that there are conditions. There are some people, before going to the car dealer, he calls a Sayyid or a Mawlana, Sayyidina, I'd like an Istikhara. perform an istikhara. But have you fulfilled the conditions? There's certain conditions. There's certain criteria. You don't just go to any religious scholar and tell him, please open the Quran for me and perform an istikhara. No, there are certain conditions. What are the conditions? Number one, you do your research. You think about it. You use your brain and your God-given logic and reason, and you do your research. Is this project good for me or is it not good for me? Think about it. Weigh out the pros and cons. Do some research. You're about to start a business. For example, you want to sell cars. Go and do your research. Is selling cars now at the moment, is it right? Will it fail? Will it succeed? Is it the right business? Or is there any other business? Do your research. Before jumping to make an istikhara immediately, go do research. Think about it. This is the first condition. The second condition is to ask advice. Ask those who have more experience than you. Ask those who have gone into the same business that you would like to start. If you'd like to get married, ask for advice from the elders, from parents, from community members, friends of the person that you would like to marry, so on and so forth. Ask for advice. Then, after you've done complete research and you've thought about it, and you've sought for advice, you've asked for advice, at the end, when you're completely indecisive, the research didn't do you any good, and the advice wasn't beneficial as well, when you're completely indecisive, then you perform an istikhara. That is why we have this famous saying that says, Al-khiratu 'inda al-hira. That you go to the Quran and perform an istikhara when you're completely indecisive. You don't know what to do. But if you can go and ask for advice, do research, think about it, weigh the pros and cons, you don't need to perform an istikhara. There are some people that refuse to think. They refuse to do research. They're too lazy. Why? Because they're so used to performing an istikhara. It's become easy for them. Why think when you can perform an istikhara? This is wrong. We have a hadith that say, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Can I ask the brothers to pull forward, please? Because there are some that are coming in and they have to walk ahead of you. So I ask you to pull forward. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Come more forward. Come more, pull forward to make room for others, please. Send another loud salawat. We have a hadith that say whatever you start, you go on a journey, you start a project, you go and propose. اعقل ثم توكل. Think about it. Consider it. Sleep on it. Don't make a quick decision. Always think. اعقل ثم توكل. It seems very simple. But even though it's very simple, many people, they don't think. For them, it's a lot easier to perform an istikhara, depend on the istikhara, and put their minds on hold. For others, they refuse to seek advice. They'd rather perform an istikhara. Why? We have so many ahadith that say seeking advice is important. مَا خَابَ مَنِ اسْتَشَارَ. If you seek advice, you will not go wrong, one hadith says. And another hadith, مَنِ اسْتَشَارَ الرَّجَالِ جَمَعَ عُقُولَ الرَّجَالِ. He who seeks advice from others, he is collecting their minds and brains and opinions as well. The famous American hadith says 2 brains is better than 1. That's why don't we seek advice? Before performing an istikhara, seek advice from those who have more experience than you, from the elders in the community. Once you've done your research and you've sought advice and you're still indecisive, you still cannot make a decision, then you perform an istikhara. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. How do we perform an istikhara? Can anyone perform an istikhara, or does it have to be religious scholars? No, it does not need to be religious scholars. It could be anyone. It could be anyone. Yes, unfortunately today, and I say this not with the intention of attacking anyone, but with the intention of constructive criticism, but that unfortunately there are some scholars everywhere in the Islamic world, or even here in the West, there are some scholars that have no job other than to perform istikharas. They don't do public speaking, they don't perform da'wah, they don't visit colleges, universities, churches, synagogues, they don't write, they don't publish. The only thing that they do is they sit at home for people to call them and perform an istikhara. Performing an istikhara is not just the job of a religious scholar. Anyone can perform an istikhara as long as you know how to. One way of performing an istikhara, the famous way, the most popular way, is through the Quran. You recite a dua. There's a special dua that is mentioned in Mafatih al-Jinan and other books. Ya absar al-nadirin, ya a'lam al-alamin, ya asma' al-sami'in. Astaghfirullah. You say astaghfirullah several times. You send salawat on the Prophet and his family. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And then you open the Quran to any page. To any page. But of course don't cheat. There's some people that cheat. If they want a good istikhara, they know which page to turn. And if they want a bad one, they know exactly which page. No cheating in istikhara. If you want genuine advice from Allah, you open a random page and you read on the right side, the first line on the right side. You read the verse. If it is a verse addressing, for example, the qualities of heaven, the characteristics of heaven, the characteristics of the believers, Allah's forgiveness, Allah's mercy, the qualities of the Prophet, then this is what? This is good. This is a good sign. But if the verse is addressing hellfire or punishment or the kuffar and the qualities of the kuffar, the qualities of hypocrites and mushrikeen, this is obviously bad. And yes, sometimes the verse is vague. Here you need a scholar. Not everyone can understand the verse. Thus, if you perform an istikhara by the Quran, it is better to have a scholar perform it for you. Because some verses are vague. You don't know whether it's... Because not all verses discuss heaven and hell. You don't just have two options. It could be a very ambiguous verse. Here you need the help of a scholar to tell you what does this verse mean and what does it entail. The result will be, does that action have an advantage or disadvantage? This is one way of performing an istikhara. Another way of performing an istikhara is by tasbih. You hold a tasbih, you hold a handful of beads. A handful, 10, 20. And again, don't cheat. So there are some people, they know exactly which number to have for it to become good or bad. No. A random number. You grab 2 from each side. You pull 2 from here, 2 from here, 2 from here, 2 from here. The result will be one of the following. If you're left with 1 bead, that means the action has an advantage. If you're left with 2 beads, that means the action has disadvantage. Don't do it. If it's 3 beads, it's neutral. You could do it, you could not do it. If it's 4 beads, don't do it. It's very bad. This is another way. The third way, the most authentic way, the narrations that we have regarding how to perform an istikhara, the third way is the best. Because the most authentic hadith tell us about the third way, which is called Salat Dhatul Ruqa'. What does it mean? Salat Dhatul Ruqa', you grab 6 sheets of paper. 6 sheets of paper. On 3 of them, you write if'al, do. On 3 of them, you write la taf'al, don't do. And then you mix them up. And you put them under your sajjada, where you pray. And then you pray 2 units of salat. 2 units, rak'atayn. When you finish your salat, you say several times, Astaghfirullah, Astaghfirullah, Astaghfirullah. I ask Allah for the best outcome. And then you pull out 5 of the sheets of paper. 5. After you've mixed them up. Don't put the do's on top of the don'ts. After you mix them up, you pull out 5 of the sheets of paper and you see what is the majority, because it's going to be 3 by 2. You see what is the majority. 3 of them, did they say do or don't do? If it says do, that means that action has an advantage. If it says don't do, that means it has a disadvantage. Don't do it. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now the results of the istikhara. When we say it's good or it's bad, what does that mean? There's some people that think istikhara is fortune telling. I've seen many. They think istikhara is fortune telling. A lot of times, some people, especially when I'm in Karbala, I'm in the Haram of Imam Hossein, some people, they come to me and they say, Sayyid, we want an istikhara. I perform an istikhara and the man starts crying. I'm baffled. I have no idea why is this person crying. I told him, why are you crying? Because I told him it's bad. He starts crying. He said, because you told me it's bad. I told him, so what? He said, that means I'm not going to have children. I told him, what are you talking about? He said, me and my wife have been trying to have children for the past 7 years. Now that I performed an istikhara, you told me bad. That means I'm never going to have children. I told him, where'd you get this from? Who told you this? You think istikhara is fortune telling? This is wrong. There's many people that think istikhara is fortune telling. Poor young lady, she's 35 years old, she hasn't been getting married. She performs an istikhara to see if she's going to receive a proposal this year or not. This is not the case. Or some people, they come to us, he's lost his money, and he wants to perform an istikhara to see will his money come back to him or not. This has nothing to do with istikhara. And there are hadith that say this, لا تتفألوا بالقرآن. Don't think that the Quran is an oracle, like in Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, there was an oracle that people would go and ask, kings, emperors, even regular people, they would go to this oracle, usually a female, a priestess, and they would ask her, for example, I'm going on a journey or a battle or a war. Are we going to win or not win? And this oracle tells them, yes, you will win, or you don't win. Istikhara, it's not an oracle. It's definitely not an oracle. Perhaps there are some people out there, there are crooks, especially in the Middle East. They tell you, yes, you know what's going to happen to you? Some beautiful young man is going to come propose to you. He's very rich. He owns a nice car. But his mother, she's not a good mother. Or something like this. They tell people the future. As if the istikhara tells them the future. Istikhara does not tell you about the future. It is not fortune telling. People need to understand this. Istikhara only tells you that this action that you like to perform, whether it's marriage or a business project, or it's going to Umrah, going to Ziyarah, going on a journey, flying out somewhere, does it have an advantage or it doesn't have an advantage? That's it. It doesn't tell you the future. It doesn't tell you how many children you're going to have. Who are you going to get married to? Is he a Sayyid? Is he a non-Sayyid? Is he short? Is he fat? None of this. Istikhara is not fortune telling. Sallu ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. Furthermore, there are some people that are addicted to istikharas. They're addicted to istikharas. I remember maybe 15 years ago when we used to live in Los Angeles, and my father was also in Los Angeles. There was a person, he would call my father maybe every 2 days, and he would say, Sayyidina, I would like 18 istikharas. I would like 17 istikharas. One after the other. It was ridiculous. This person was addicted to istikharas. This person has put his brain on the shelf. He's turned his brain off, and he depends only on istikhara. This is wrong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a brain. He's given us reason. He's given us logic. He says use it. Allah give us a brain, for us to use it once in a while. If not every day, but at least once in a while, let's use this brain. So that we use it. Not that we put it on the shelf and then perform istikhara on everything that we'd like to do. On everything. I know some people, they won't leave the house if he doesn't take an istikhara. He wants to have coffee. Where's my prayer bead? He wants to go out with his friends. Let me take an istikhara. This is ridiculous. Istikhara is not for such matters. It's not for such matters. In fact, we are insulting the Quran when we do this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a brain to be used. Here's a question that some people ask. That, for example, I perform an istikhara. I'd like to go on a business trip to, for example, Idaho. I want to go on a business trip. So I perform an istikhara and it comes out bad. But I really want to go. I really want to go on this business trip. Can I go or can I not go? If I violate the istikhara, is it haram or is it not haram? What is the answer? Violating the istikhara is not haram. If you really wish to do so, you could do so. There's some youth, they come and perform an istikhara, for example, on marriage. He likes a young lady, he comes and does an istikhara, it comes out bad. Now that it comes out bad, he regrets, he still wants to marry her. He says, can I marry her? Tell him, if you're dying to marry her, knock yourself out. Go and marry her. It's not haram. However, you're violating istikhara, you're violating advice. It's like asking a doctor, going to the doctor tells you you have diabetes, you're diabetic. So stay away from this, and this. But you go home and you eat this, and this. Exactly what the doctor told you not to eat. What will happen? You're harming yourself. At the end of the day, you're harming yourself. When the istikhara tells you don't do it, and you go ahead and you do it, you're violating an advice. You're going to pay the price. It's not haram. It's not haram. But you're going against good advice. And I've seen many times in which people perform an istikhara and then they violate it, it comes out bad, disadvantage. They go ahead and do it, they regret it later on. They see bad consequences. They see bad results. So if you perform an istikhara, don't violate it. If you're asking for advice, take the advice. Don't violate the advice. However, of course, sometimes there are emergencies. Sometimes there are emergencies. If you really have to violate the istikhara, someone had to say 2 nights ago, or maybe yesterday, he talked about this. The advice given by Ayatollah al-Uzma Sheikh Behjat. If you have to really violate, you give sadaqah and you perform dua. Give sadaqah. You took an istikhara to go on a business trip and it came out bad, but you still want to go, give sadaqah before you go. In case anything bad happens, you give sadaqah. And then you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection. Ask Him for the best outcomes. Say astaghfirullah. Say it 100 times. There are some people that don't understand the results of an istikhara. They don't know what it means. Some people, they take an istikhara, for example, to go on a business trip. It comes out bad. Yet they still go ahead and go. I've seen this. This has happened with me. They perform an istikhara to go on a business trip. It comes out bad. They go ahead and go. When they come back, they tell me, Maulana, I've made $10,000 during this trip. How come you told me it's bad? I made a good amount of money on this trip, but you told me it's bad. Just because you made money This doesn't mean that this was good. You've missed something else. You see, people judge the results materialistically. If they made money, that means this is good. Why did the istikhara come out bad? Or for example, there are some people, they want to buy a house. They perform an istikhara, it comes out good. Once he buys that house, that property comes down. They come and complain. Say, why did you tell me it was good? The prices went down. Or for example, the first month when I moved into this house, I got robbed. Why did you tell me that this istikhara was good? It was bad. No. You see, we cannot judge the results materialistically. Perhaps there are other reasons that you and I couldn't see. Perhaps when you went on this business trip, yes, you made money. But perhaps at the same time, you went and you gambled. And you disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Perhaps you committed a sin during this trip. And that is why the istikhara came out bad. But when you made money, you thought that it was good. But when Allah says it has a disadvantage, He's not just looking at the materialistic side. He's also looking at the spiritual side, the religious side. A man came to Imam al-Sadiq one day. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He told him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I'd like to go to Iraq. The Imam was in Medina. He told him, I want to go to Iraq for a business trip. What do you think? Should I go or should I not go? The Imam told him, don't go. Told him, don't go. Yet this person did not take the advice of the Imam and he went on the business trip. When he came back, he came to visit the Imam. He told him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I made a lot of money on this trip. Why did you tell me not to go? I made a whole lot of money on this trip. But you told me not to go. While you should have told me to go. The Imam told him, think back. What did you do on this trip? Didn't you miss Salatul Subh one day on this trip? He said, yes. He said, that's why I told you not to go. That man, he missed Salatul Subh, Salatul Fajr. During his trip, the Imam was looking at that aspect. Not the money. Who cares about the money? Yeah, me and you care about the money. But when Allah gives us good outcomes, it's not just about the money, my dear friends. There are bigger pictures. A couple performed, this is a real story, a couple performed istikhara on marriage. After 1 year, they divorced. After 1 year, they divorced. My father performed the istikhara for them. The istikhara came out perfect. After 1 year, they divorced. Some they came and they complained. You performed an istikhara for us, it came out good. Yo, we divorced after a year. Yes, it came out good. It doesn't mean there's no divorce. You have to look at another aspect, another picture. We're missing the point. Perhaps that marriage would have ended disastrously in another way. Perhaps from this marriage a child would have been born. This child would have been a sinful person. From this sort of aspect. Thus we cannot be hasty and judge. Well, it became, this istikhara is good, that means I'll make money. Or the istikhara is bad, that means I'll lose money. It's not all materialistic, my dear friends. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Furthermore, there are some people that are psychologically affected by an istikhara. For example, especially for those that violate the istikhara. For example, some couples, they perform an istikhara on marriage. They perform an istikhara on marriage. It comes out bad. But because they're madly in love with each other, and they've been speaking to each other for such a long time, they decide to go ahead and get married. But as soon as the istikhara was bad, they go ahead and get married. But as soon as one fight breaks out, they say, see, this was the result of the istikhara. So instead of trying to resolve the problem, they let the problem grow bigger and bigger. Why? Because in their head, this marriage is about to fail. The istikhara was bad. So they misbehave with each other. They disrespect one another. They violate each other's rights. Why? Because in the back of their head, the istikhara is bad. This marriage is going to fail. And what actually happens is they'll get married and they'll get divorced. While when the istikhara came out bad, It probably didn't mean that they will get a divorce. Probably meant they might have financial difficulties. Or for the first 3 years they cannot have children. But they assume that it's divorce. So when a fight breaks out, they won't try to resolve it. Why? Because they're psychologically already convinced that this marriage will not work. Well, first of all, don't violate an istikhara. If you want to perform an act, if you're so madly in love with her, why take an istikhara in the first place? Go ahead and marry her. When you make an istikhara, don't violate. Second, give sadaqah. 3, don't be psychologically affected, because we do not know the results. We do not know what the results mean. It could be bad, but you and I will interpret it in a different way, while Allah is looking from a different perspective. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Yes, there are some people, some pious people, some righteous people, their istikhara has genuine meaning. Sometimes it's a direct message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanallah. We've seen some people, their istikhara is a direct message from Allah. It is well known that in Qom, Ayatollah Bihjat, his istikharas were as if it's a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many people would go and perform an istikhara with Ayatollah Bihjat. And we've heard some stories from great scholars. When they perform an istikhara, it's as if it's a revelation from Allah. For example, Al-Shaykh Al-Ansari, Al-Shaykh Al-A'zam Al-Ansari, who lived approximately 250 years ago. He became the top marja' for the followers of Ahlul Bayt. When he became the top marja' for the followers of Ahlul Bayt, they went to his mother to congratulate her. The first day that he became a marja', they went to his mother to congratulate her. And he was in Najaf. His mother is in Dasful in Iran. And of course, it was a great distance. For news to travel, it took weeks. It's not like they used to tweet on Twitter that this person became a marja' or was on Facebook. No. It took weeks. When they went to his mother, they went to congratulate her. They told her that your son became the top marja' of his time. She said, I know. I know. They told her, who told you? This is new news. She said, I knew ever since he was 14 years old. Not today. I knew since he was 14 years old. She said, how? They asked her how. She said, when he wanted to leave this fool to come to Najaf. He wanted to leave Iran to come to Najaf. I did not want him to go. I was afraid for him to be living on his own. But he insisted on going to Najaf. So he decided to what? To perform an istikhara. When he performed an istikhara, the verse came out as follows. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَىٰ أَنَا أَرْضَعِيهِ فَإِذَا خِفْتِ عَلَيْهِ فَأَلْقِيهِ فِي الْيَمِّ. And then, and what is it? وَلَا تَخَافِي وَلَا تَحْزَنِي إِنَّا رَادُّوهُ إِلَيْكِ وَجَاعِلُوهُ مِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. That we told Allah, the verse came out as the following. That we told the mother of Musa that breastfeed him. But if you feared for him, put him in a box and put him in the river. And do not have fear, we will bring him back to you as a messenger. She said, this is the verse that came out. So I knew my son will have a great position in the future. And one of the experiences that we've had with those istikharas that came out as a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In a story that occurred in 2006, a story that occurred with my own father, Ayatollah Hossein Qazwini. In the year 2006, in the month of June, when coming back home from the shrine of Imam Hossein alayhi salam, after leading Salat al-Jama'ah and lecturing, giving his usual lecture on tafsir, we were coming back home when two motorcyclists, they came to the car. One of them pulled out a gun and he shot my father in his hand. My father was shot. Of course, it was an assassination attempt. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rescued my father and he didn't die. Yet he was shot in his hand. And one of the bones, after going to the hospital and performing x-ray, we discovered that one of the bones had shattered into 12 pieces. Anyhow, we put him in a cast. After 1 week, we traveled to Iran. In Tehran, in the city of Tehran, my father visited some doctors because he was in major pain. He was in major pain. One of the doctors told him that you have to keep your hands like this. Keep your hands up like this. Because your hand will become very swollen. And if you don't raise your hand, all the blood will gather in your hand. So if you raise it, the blood will flow down. After a couple of weeks, we went to Mashhad. Because my father was in immense pain, we went to another doctor. The other doctor told my father that, no, this is wrong. You can't keep your hands like this. Extend your hand. Because if you keep your hand like this, it will become stiff. And maybe you will never be able to move your hand. So keep it down. Here, my father did not know what to do. Keep his hand above or extend his hand. So he performed an istikhara. When he performed an istikhara, the verse came out as the following. وَلَا تَجْعَلْ يَدَكَ مَغْلُولَةً إِلَىٰ عُنُقِكَ وَلَا تَبْسُطْهَا كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ. Do not keep your hands close to your neck and do not extend your hands fully. So what he did was he kept his hand right in the middle, following the advice of the Quran. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Istikhara, as we said, is a form of dua. Those who object to the practice of istikhara, we tell them that it's a form of dua. And when we come to the day of Ashura, we see that dua played a major role. Dua was always on the tongue of Imam Hossein alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When Ali al-Akbar entered the battlefield, Imam Hussein made a dua. Allahumma mna'hum barakat al-ard wa mazziqhum tamziqa. When his son Ali al-Asghar was killed, he also made a dua. Allahumma la yakun hadha ahwanu alayk min fasil. Oh Allah, don't take this child lightly. The same way that you punished the people of Salih when they killed the camel. When the arrow pierced through his chest, the Imam had a dua. Bismillah wa billah wa fi sabilillah wa ala millati rasulillah. The Imam put his hands under his chest. He filled his hand with blood, and he put it on his beard, on his blessed beard, and he drenched his beard with his blood, and he said, وَهَكَذَا أَلْقَى رَبِّي. This is how I'd like to meet my Lord, drenched with my own blood. هَكَذَا أَلْقَى رَبِّي وَأَقُولْ قَتَلَنِي فُلَانٌ وَفُلَانٌ. This is how I meet my Lord, and I will tell him, so and so killed me. He mentioned 2 names. Go and read about these 2 names. Which names did Imam Hussein mention? I will tell Allah that this person and this person killed me. The day of Ashura was full of du'as. Yes, among the martyrs who entered the battlefield on the day of Ashura were the 2 nephews of Imam Hussein, Awn wa Muhammad. The sons of As-Sayyidah Zainab Salamullahi alayha and the sons of Abdullah bin Ja'far. These 2 young men, one of them, Awn, was 13 years old and Muhammad was a year older than him. He was 14. They were only young. They were very young. They were teenagers. They did not leave Medina with the Imam. Rather, they came to Mecca with their father Abdullah bin Ja'far, and then Abdullah sent them to Karbala. They came by themselves. Look at their ambition. Look at how much self-control, how much dedication they had for their uncle Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, that they came by themselves from Hijaz to Iraq to stand and protect their uncle. They came and they asked permission to enter the battlefield first It was Aun that entered the battlefield. He fought bravely until Imam Hussein heard him shout, "My dear uncle Aba Abdullah, alayka minni salam." And then his brother Muhammad also entered the battlefield asking the Imam for permission. The Imam gave him permission. And moments later the Imam heard him say, "Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah." They brought the two bodies back to the camp, back to the tents. When all other martyrs, their bodies were brought back to the camp, as Sayyidah Zainab would stand with Imam Hussein. She would help him with the bodies. She would help carry the bodies. When the body of Ali al-Akbar came back, it was Sayyidah Zainab that helped bring back the bodies. But this time, when they were bringing the bodies of Aun and Muhammad, Sayyidah Zainab was not standing at the camp. She was inside performing sujood. She was thanking Allah for this blessing. She was thanking Allah that He has granted her son's martyrdom. Perhaps she was embarrassed of Aba Abdullah. Perhaps she did not want Imam Hussein to see her crying. Among those that died on the day of Ashura was Al-Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. He stood in the middle of the battlefield, looking to his right, looking to his left. One of his comrades asked him, "Ya Hurr, I see you're afraid. What are you afraid of, Ya Hurr?" He said, "أرى نفسي مخيرة بين الجنة والنار ووالله لا أختار على الجنة شيئا." I see myself making a decision between heaven and hell, and by God I will not choose anything over heaven. He rides his horse. He turns towards the camp of Imam Hussein. He rushes. The first words that he says, "Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah." The Imam says, "Wa alayka assalam." Who are you? Who is this man? He says, "أنا الذي جعجعت بك عن الطريق. أنا الذي أرعبت قلوب بنات رسول الله." My master, I was the one that brought you here to Karbala. I was the one that scared the hearts of the daughters of Rasulullah. هل تراني من توبة? My master, do you think that I may repent? The Imam tells him, "In tubd faqad tab Allahu alayk." If you repent, then Allah shall forgive you. Come sit next to us in this tent. He says, "No, I was the first to stand in your face. Allow me to be the first that fights at your hands." The Imam gives him permission. Al-Hurr enters the battlefield. He begins to recite, "إني أنا الحر ومأوى الضيف أضرب في أعناقكم بالسيف عن خير من حل بأرض الخيف أضربكم ولا أرى من حيف." He fights fiercely. He kills a great sum of the enemies until they surround him. They hit him with a sword. Al-Hurr falls on the ground. He shouts, "Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah." The Imam rushes to him. He comes down from his horse. He sits next to Al-Hurr. He removes the sand and blood from his face, and he says, "ما كذبت أمك حينما سمتك أمك حرا أنت حر في الدنيا والآخرة." Your mother was right when she called you hur, when she called you a free man. You're a free man in this life and in the next. They say that on the day of Ashura, that same evening, The family members of Al-Hur, they came, they grabbed his body and they went and they buried him. But there was one body that remained, one body that had no family members, one body that had no brothers. That body was the body of Imam Hossein. He only had his sister Zainab to come to him. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. Raise your hands in dua, brothers and sisters. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الجل الأكرم يا الله. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته، ولا هما إلا فرجته، ولا عيبا إلا سترته، ولا خوفا إلا منته، ولا رزقا إلا بسطته، ولا شملا إلا جمعته، ولا مرضا إلا شفيته، ولا غائبا إلا حفظته وأدنيته، ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها صلاة إلا قضيتها ويسرتها يا أرحم الراحمين. ولأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والعلماء والشهداء نقرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.